Welcome to Life Gloss, a beauty podcast for sassy and seasoned women who have lived life and have a drawer full of lip gloss to prove it. We're your hosts, Susan Gerdeman
and Hillary Clark-Mina. Join us each Thursday as we discuss life and how it relates to the world of beauty inside and out.
Hello, beauties, and welcome back to Life Gloss. We are halfway through season 1. Can you believe it?
Oh, it's been thrilling. It's been unbelievably wonderful. And meeting all of our audience members and interviewing all of our guests and looking at what we have planned for upcoming episodes. I'm just over the moon. I'm having so much fun with this.
Me too. It's just like flown by completely. And I think connecting with everybody on social and just being able to hang out with you, Hillary, it's been awesome.
Well, Yay. It's just like we said all those years ago when that woman saw us on a FaceTime catch up and said, how do I get in on this conversation? And that's how Life Gloss was born. And here we are. We're still talking.
Well, we're so glad all of you have been enjoying us as much as we've been enjoying ourselves. So let's continue with the good times, shall we? Today's episode is Backstage Pass to Mass and Class. It's all about the wild world of drugstore beauty, known as mass, and prestige beauty, known as class. And let's not forget mastige, which is a combination of mass and prestige. But we'll talk more about that.
So, Susan, are you a mass gal or a class gal? I'm more of a mass. I'm heavy on the mastige, but there's definitely class in there. So I'm probably 70 mastige, 30 class. What are you?
Well, I think with me, it depends on who you ask. I'm just kidding. I think if I had to pick and be really honest with myself, definitely more of a class gal. I really love and have such a soft spot for luxury, having worked in it pretty much my whole career. Although I did spend some time with some mass. I appreciate mass. I don't look down on it. Nothing thrills me more than tearing through the aisles of Rite Aid or CVS and digging up and seeing what really cool things are out there. But I really do love the whole glitz and glamour. And, I really like the whole idea of using something that I know has incredible ingredients, but also just sort of makes me feel really good. Like there's nothing more beautiful than the sound of a really heavy lipstick closing, that click. We used to always say at Chanel, the click of the lipstick was intentionally made to sound like the closing of a Mercedes car door. So I just really like that sound. I mean, who doesn't? It's just kind of fun.
Absolutely. It's true. And, when you look at how the automobile industry has influenced beauty all the way back to the 30s through the 50s, when automobile paint is actually what inspired nail polish, you see the lines between beauty and luxury. And Revlon in the early days, who you worked for as a spokesperson, Revlon was a luxury brand in the beginning. And Coty, who very few people even know is a French brand, was considered a luxury brand. So I love tearing through the Rite Aid and CVS aisles as well. And I love finding the bargain. When I work with my private clients, I'll send them to Neiman Marcus. I'll send them to Violet Grey. I'll also send them to CVS and Rite Aid because they're definitely places to spend and places to save. And that's where we're going to go with this.
Yeah. And having spent time in education at Coty, I will tell you, they are a luxury brand and a French brand. And they own so many different brands. And we can talk about that later. But I just think in general, mass and class is something that I don't know if consumers really think that hard about the differences. I mean, these are terms that we use behind the scenes as industry professionals. So hopefully in today's episode, we can educate everyone a little bit as to the differences. Is one better than the other? Is one, what is the main difference between each of them? How do we spend? Those are just some of the things that we want to talk about in this episode, because I think everyone will get a lot out of this as far as education goes, for sure. And hopefully some spending tips. So whether you are a mass person or you're a class person, I have an interesting fact for you, Hillary. I love my facts. According to a June 2023 article on payments.com, women that are 50 plus, including us Gen Xers, have a spending power of approximately $15 trillion. Is that how much you have, Hill? Do you have 15 trillion? Yeah.
To throw at lipstick all day, every day. Absolutely.
Or shoes. By contrast, the US has approximately 36 million female millennials. They have a total spending power of 2.5 trillion. So big difference there between 15 and 2.5, if my lipstick math is correct. Take note, beauty industry. We're not invisible. We are very powerful, sassy, and seasoned women, and we got the buck to spend.
Exactly. We have what they would call the power of the purse in the beauty industry. And we spend differently than our mothers, and we spend differently than our daughters. And I think that our spending habits are going to really change the face of beauty, much like we did in the mid to late 90s, because it used to be that the moms spent on Estee Lauder and their daughters spent on Clinique. So it used to be the mom that spent more and the daughter that spent less. Then we kind of started to see a little bit of a change. Then we saw a big difference in like 2014 to 2017. The industry flipped on its head. Girls were watching YouTube, they were watching TikTok, they were watching Instagram. I don't know if TikTok was around then, but Instagram, and especially around like 2015, everything flipped on its head. The daughters were outspending the moms. The daughters were more educated. The girls were, the whole financial model flipped. But now that we're starting to age and we need to see the difference products, we are coming back in strong. Not that, it matters hugely, or it's better if one spends over the others, but we're really coming into our own and taking responsibility for how we spend. And when you think about it, we came up in the 90s during the rivalry between mass, class, and indie. So, and we didn't have social media. So we had to learn really early on how to spend low and where to splurge high. It's like we would buy our Revlon lipsticks, Toast of New York and all of those. But then we'd also go for a Chanel Bam. So we had to buy and try and discern by performance. And that's why I say that we're or we'll believe it when we see it generation. And early on, brands like MAC, Bobbi Brown, and Chanel, they had to perform to gain our loyalty. And we hold a really high bar. We don't just fall for the tricks and the shiny balls, because we were there when AHA's upended the skincare game. And we were also the first to try Botox. So you really have to convince us, and you can't just sell us a shiny ad. You might get us once, but you'll never get us twice, and we'll tell everybody.
And I think the bottom line too, Hillary, is that as you get older, you really do get wiser. You become more savvy to the tricks. You sort of take away the smoke and mirrors, as I like to say, of the beauty industry. And you say, wow, I spent all this money on this product. It's not even working. And why isn't it working? So what is it about, how we're spending, how we're looking at the difference between mass and class? And I think, to your point, there was really that time where, it really was a huge difference between math and class. Now you're really seeing this sort of bridging it almost. And people are almost proud to say, look at this dupe, or look at this product that I found. It wears just as well as a luxury item, whether that's a lip gloss or, an eyeliner. That seems to be something that has sort of come up in the past 10 plus years. Before that, we didn't really hear that word dupe, or we didn't even even really know as much of a difference about mass and class. Now you're really seeing that there's huge differences, but it's also kind of melding together at the same time. It's fascinating.
Yes, people are mixing it up. We're going where we find the value. It's like wearing your Zara jeans with your little Chanel jacket, or, you know, mixing up your metals. And we're mixing it up. We're going high and we're going low. And now there's this huge category in between called masstige, which really bridges that gap.
Yeah. And masstige, for our listeners, will explain, now that I think everyone really understands what we're talking about with what mass is and what class is, and these terms get thrown around. But masstige is really what I like to call, you know, democratic beauty. And it's sort of beauty for everyone. This is what we were talking about earlier, that blending together of something that's luxury-esque, but something that maybe is leaning more towards a mass or a drugstore price. And we're starting to see masstige becoming even bigger. And one of the reasons for that is the clean beauty industry. Traditionally, if you look at it, is more masstige. Look at a lot of the clean beauty brands like Ela, Say, Merit, Tower 28. All of these brands fall under clean, but they also sort of fall under that masstige beauty.
Yes. And one of the reasons for that is because of the cost of goods. It's more expensive to create quote unquote clean beauty. Clean beauty has to hold itself to a higher standard, and sourcing, regulations, all of the things that go into creating a clean brand is a little more expensive. So while they wanted to be accessible to mass in their price point, they had to go higher in price point because of what they were delivering. So masstige, you're absolutely right, Susan. So that's part of the reason that masstige tends to be at that middle of the road. And we get some luxury clean, of course, as well. Masstige, definitely the clean movement drove that.
And I also think that people have to understand that, generally speaking, from retailer point of view, mass was always drugstores. Okay. Class was always department stores, specialty stores. That's where you got your beauty. Then we come along into the 90s and we start seeing the whole movement of independent beauty boutiques. We start seeing the Sephora's, the Cosbar, the Violet Grays, and then piggyback on that. And then you have the clean beauty boutiques, the Detox Bar or Detox Market, Credo, sort of stores like that have come along. And that's really where you start to see masstige explode, that balance between the luxury feel and environment with sort of leaning prices towards more of a mass. Not to say that some of these brands are inexpensive. They're not, but they're definitely not on that high luxury Clé de Peau, Sisley type level. And I remember, as I know you do, you worked for Sephora. I helped train Sephora when they first came into the US. And when that came, that whole concept and idea of, wait a minute, there's stores that you can go to that are just for beauty. It was mind blowing. And for anyone who remembers when Sephora first came out, it was huge. It was huge. It changed everything.
Absolutely. It was the Wild West. And when Sephora first came, I was still a beauty director with Nordstrom, still an educator. And I remember when they came and they eliminated the counter. They put the consumer right at the front of the bay. She was able to touch it. She was able to feel it. She was able to test and sample. She didn't have to have it handed to her. She could reach for it. She could try it. And when I first saw the stores, I had a number of friends that were in the store level. It was absolutely revolutionary, and I knew I needed to be a part of it. So when Sephora.com was getting ready to open their doors in 1999, and they reached out to me and recruited me as their West Coast beauty editor, and I was their educator and their West Coast makeup artist. This is back when Sephora actually had a printed magazine. So we had a whole editorial staff. We had a real magazine. I was interviewing and talking to all of the greats with Sephora. And also I created the beauty advisor area. We talk about all this in some of our earlier episodes, but Sephora was incredible, and it was an incredible ride, and it started to bridge mass and class.
And I think you bring up a really great point that I totally forgot about, Hillary. Having, our training seminars for Sephora were handled so differently, because you're right. these independent beauty bars, as we call them, or independent beauty boutiques, they really were the first time that consumers were able to get help, but it wasn't the type of help that was behind the counter. And luxury was always behind the counter, very much that, service, sit down, very different. And the bays, a bay for our listeners, is the area, the counter area is known as a bay, where you have all the different brands behind there and around a counter. So to have all these advisors coming out from behind the bay into the general public was revolutionary. It was like, my God, you can be helped, but someone's standing right next to you. So did it take away the luxury vibe, or did it make it more democratic? Like, we're equal with you and we love beauty too. And it was really revolutionary if you really start to dissect it as a marketing and sales technique.
Yes, it was both. It definitely made it more democratic. It did take some of the luxury away, but and so many of our listeners might not remember this. When Sephora launched in 1998, and then Sephora.com launched in 1999, it was still very French, very luxury. They were still wearing the one glove because it was like the Japanese tea ceremony, presenting the product. So it was still very like, you walked into a Sephora with like a hushed tone and a hushed voice. And it was a very sacred, holy beauty space. So it still felt luxury, but you felt like you get your hands on it.
Yes. And then at some point, it really turned into definitely much more hands off, very casual. You go in now, it's a totally different experience. And I think the one beauty boutique, as I like to call them, that sort of took this concept of luxury department store and the masstige of Sephora, but tried to elevate it a little bit, was Blue Mercury. And I think that she did a great job with sort of saying, well, I like the idea that there's no bays and it's open concept, but it still it's sort of, I felt like they wanted to be sort of one up from Sephora a little bit and sort of set themselves, apart. And then I think, of course, my personal favorite, if we're going to be totally honest, is Cosbar. One of my favorite to work with, one of my favorites still to this day to shop in. Cosbar, I think, has done such a beautiful job of really elevated luxury boutique cosmetic shopping. Do you agree?
I do agree. And it gives it a personal feel. I mean, in 2002, I opened Blush Beauty on Union Street, and that was a by appointment off the street. There was no sign. If you knew, you knew. And women would come in to me, not only for lessons, for applications, but to also shop, because I was one of the first in the country to curate both low and high, but I didn't bring in the whole line. I would contact a brand and say, I would like these 3 colors, these 3 SKUs, these 4 things, or this one thing. And I remember when I was first calling brands and saying, oh, I'd like to carry just this one thing. They didn't even know what I was talking about. Like Tila Clerk was like, what? But no, you need to get the whole big tester unit. You need to get all of it. I was like, no, I only want banana. And I only want this and that and the other. Fortunately, because I'd been a beauty editor, because I was still contributing to magazines, they looked at my pedigree and they looked at, oh, she's a beauty editor. She's opening her own private boutique. She can carry just a few SKUs. So I was able to hand pick which SKUs I wanted early on. So it made that special sort of an energy and a very special, like, oh, I've been welcomed into like somebody's basically their private beauty boudoir to shop for their very favorite things. And I'd send them, to Sephora and CVS as well. But that's kind of what you and I are doing here with our conversations too. So
that's right. And, you reminded me in talking about Blush Beauty, which was such a great beauty boutique, Hillary, think about some of, in thinking about drugstores, we always think in mass drugstore, right? And you think things like, Duane Reade, Rite Aid, CVS, etc. But in New York, I can tell you there are drugstores that are, and I know there are in other cities too, but drugstores, for example, like Zittimer, another one of my favorites, Bigelow's, another one of my favorites, who I had, the opportunity, both those, to train and work with when I was with Cody. And these are drugstores with a pharmacy, but they are total luxury drugstores. You have behind the counter, you have some of the most savvy beauty advisors working there. So again, different ways of looking at mass and class. And the bottom line is, you can find it anywhere. I mean, Target is now known as Target to everybody, right? And look at what they've done with their beauty world in partnering with Boots, another one that's really that sort of masstige drugstore. So that's like a whole other concept. It's just amazing how our industry keeps evolving as far as marketing goes, and as far as how we try to basically service the consumer. Sometimes we do it right and sometimes we really screw it up. What do you think, Hill, is the main difference between mass and class for you? What do you think the main difference is?
Performance. And there are some things in mass that perform incredibly well and that you can get in mass. For example, for anybody that's been listening, I'm a L'Oreal Voluminous Mascara fan. I try to cheat on it all the time. I try not to be loyal. I try to break up with it. I do chase shiny balls when it comes to that one, but I always go back to it. So there are certain things that mass does for me incredibly well. Mascara, and sometimes the lip gloss, and some lipsticks being one of them. I mean, I have a little bit of a love affair with Revlon just because, I do love vintage beauty. I love the history of Charles Revson. For example, this year is the 70th anniversary of Cherries in the Snow, which changed and revolutionized the way that women shopped for beauty. It was the first time that women shopped for themselves for makeup rather than for what their husbands wanted them to look like, or for under threat of losing a husband, except for the 20s when the libertines and all the women, the suffragettes, were wearing red lipstick to get the vote. But there's a lot of history that goes with makeup. So sorry, I digress. But so I have a love affair, and I grew up, with some of those, the blackberries of, Revlon, and the Toast of New York, and the Frosted Brownie in the 80s, and all of those colors. The big difference for me is performance. And now that I've had well over a decade in product development, I understand why. For foundations, for eyeshadows, anything that's going to have a color payoff, I lean very strongly. If you can get away with mastige, and they're getting better, so you can more now, but a prestige when it comes to color and payoff, the way that it's milled, the way that it's sourced, you're going to get the best pigments, you're going to get the best payoff. So it's performance for me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not going to lie. And, we've been around long enough to know there are major differences between mass and class. So anyone that tells you, oh, it's all the same, or it's, just a dupe, that's not necessarily true. There are some ingredients that are definitely more expensive to produce, and you can just feel the texture, the viscosity of luxury products. Even the packaging is so different in the weight, the look, etc. But beyond the imagery and the bells and the whistles and the shininess, it is about the ingredients. And I do agree with you 100% that in many cases, and not all, you're going to get what you pay for in prestige beauty. You are going to want to spend on items like foundations, powders, shadows. Those products just have a higher pigment load, better quality ingredients, better payoff, better wearability. But to your point, Hillary, save your money and do your dupes in your mascaras, your eyeliners, things like that. That's where you can save your money. But when it comes to where you want to spend your money in mass versus class, spend your money on the important things in luxury beauty, the foundations, for sure.
Yes, absolutely. You can go all day long and find beautiful lip liners, eyeliners. Sometimes they get it right in the bronzer category in mass too, which sounds crazy after what we've just said. But bronzers, once in a while, they can get it right. But especially as we get older and our skin changes, like I was able to throw anything on my skin when I was younger. I did have some issues with breakouts, so I had to be careful here and there. In my mid-20s, I had strange hormonal breakouts, but I find that there's a difference between mass and class, and I see that in powders, foundations, and eyeshadows, and also in cheeks. Like if I'm seeing more pores, I have to be more careful about, our pigments going to grab and sit in my pores? Are powders going to make me look drier? And I have to look for something that has a hydrating element or just a blotting element rather than a powder element. And with foundation, I have to be so very careful now. And absolutely, I look to prestige and luxury for the class, because I just haven't found anything that keeps my skin looking like beautiful skin in mass.
So the $1 million question, I think most of our listeners will be asking themselves after this episode, is one better than the other, mass or class? And I think our answer is no, just different. They're very different. You get what you pay for, not all the time, but in many cases, it is true. So let's talk a little bit about some products and some purchases in mass versus class. The one thing that came out of the mass versus class and the whole masstige arena is the word dupe. And that really started when the internet exploded, and people started going online and talking and comparing notes. And we never used the word dupe really until, people went online and started discussing this stuff. So let's talk about what a dupe is. Are they worth it? What products do we like? What do you think, Hill?
So the first time I ever saw a dupe was for the Touche Éclat by Yves Saint Laurent. The little highlighter / concealer stylo pen. It's the best. Everyone has tried to dupe it. We started seeing Allure magazine was calling out dupes. And then the brands started getting on board and creating mass dupes for class products.
Correct.
Sometimes they'll work. Sometimes they don't. You don't have a lot to lose in trying a dupe, but there is a difference. And again, coming from a product development standpoint, I know what happens in the labs when someone walks in with a Touche Éclat and they say, oh, I want you to dupe this. Well, Touche Éclat reflects light, it's illuminating, it's brightening. So what will a dupe brand do? They'll throw pearls in it. So you just end up with a concealer that's pearly, which is weird. Like I've seen so many bad Touche Éclat dupes. Sometimes you'll get a good dupe, but then also even with a lip gloss, and you can get away with a lip gloss here or there, but even there, you'll get like a weird flavor, a weird taste. The color will break up. Like, we have the Tarte Shape Tape. Everyone's tried to dupe that. I've been, trying the most famous dupe in the drugstore, but I find it drying. The dry down is too fast. You don't have time to play with it. It leaves me chalky. They just came out with a hydrating version. I'm still not in love with it. So
I think one of the brands that really I think there's two brands that come to mind when I think of dupes. One of them is NYX and the other is e.l.f. And on their own, those are both great mass brands, drugstore brands. They do an excellent job. I think especially NYX does an incredible job. I think of their shade range, the quality of the product, the price point. But that being said, those two brands, I think, are sort of kings or queens of the dupes. And you'll see, like, one thing I noticed, lip oils, huge right now. Dior did a gorgeous lip oil. They were sort of the first ones to really do the lip oil thing. And they did a beautiful job. And, NYX has come along with their fat oil, which is a great dupe. Is there a difference? Sure. Packaging wise, 100%. NYX packaging, in my opinion, not the greatest, not the best, but also the product inside, the wearability, the longevity. Again, to your point, Hill, we get back to the pigmentation. You put a Dior lip oil on, and then you compare it to, say, a NYX fat oil, right? That's their version of a lip oil. And will they look the same? Yeah. Will they wear the same? Absolutely not. There are differences. And again, it's what you're willing to put up with, what you're willing to spend. If you think that's just a product that's a lot of fun and you want to wear it, then do the dupe. But if it's something you absolutely love, like that's your favorite product, spend the money, go in to the class brand, go into the luxury brand.
Yes, absolutely. And, and as I'm getting older and I'm seeing differences in my skin, I wear less makeup. I invest in less makeup. So I have some leftover cash to spend on the things that are important for me. So like, we talk about the Charlotte Tilbury, the Hollywood filter, or the Soleil Tan de Chanel, the sheer illuminating fluid.
Yes.
I've tried to dupe those and they sit on my skin. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It sits on my skin. It's
Very
curly. It's chalky.
Yep.
It's glittery. It just looks like I painted an old handbag with glitter paint. It doesn't work. And that goes back to how expensive the pearls are. So, we don't want you at home to feel like, okay, these two broads are just telling me I need to spend all this money. That's not the case at all. Just be strategic. Be strategic. Find out where your playful areas are, or where like your eyeliner, your lip liner, your mascaras, save on those. Spend on anything that has anything to do with skin. That's where you want to spend your money, is in skin.
Or something that you're going to use a lot. A favorite product. If you are a mascara gal and that is the only product you're using, or the one that you love, spend the money. Get the luxury one if you like it. If not, go and, do your L'Oreal, do your Revlon, do your CoverGirl. So I agree with you, Hillary, 100%. Be strategic. And I want to talk for a minute about the best mass brands, the best class brands, value-wise. Now that I think our listeners understand the difference between the two, the pros and cons, the ingredient story, and all of that, there is a difference between, these products, but there are some brands, quite frankly, that do an incredible job in mass in certain formulations. One of those for me personally is Physicians Formula. Does some of the best powdered bronzers. They're called butter bronzers. Those hold up against any luxury bronzer out there. And I've had disasters in class and luxury with some bronzers. I'm looking at you, Gucci Beauty, with their new bronzers and the whole new makeup line they came out with. The bronzers are, for me personally, powder bronzers, huge disappointment in the lightweight plastic packaging for $70 or whatever I paid. There's a gray tone to them, in my opinion. So I'm not loving it. We can hold it for another episode, but I'm not loving it. Compared to the Physicians Formula, I got to tell you, they kind of won when I did a comparison on others and on myself. Are there any brands in the mass category value-wise that you stand behind?
Yes, you're going to laugh at this. Who I absolutely love for lip liners and eyeliners? Wet n Wild. Like, yes. I still go Wet n Wild for a lip liner and an eyeliner. I love them. I mean, and I've already told you, Revlon's doing some great things with lips. I love what they've been doing with some lips lately. But yeah, I'll go Wet n Wild all day. Erin Parsons is doing some things with Maybelline. I think that's really interesting. It's hard when an expert like Erin or even Pat or anybody else goes in and does a mask, because they are so limited financially.
Yes.
I don't know her. I have not spoken with her about this, but I know that with a large corporation, there are, they build a product with a price point that's already been assigned by, the money people. So you kind of have to back out of there, and you have to make compromises all the way. Compromises in packaging, compromises in ingredients, all the way through. You have to compromise. So I heard some very good things. I am going to try a foundation that I know she's recently worked on. So as much as I've just said, I feel like I have to stay in class in foundation. I'm going to go out and I'm going to try some of the foundations that Erin's worked on for Maybelline. But yeah, I love my Wet n Wild liners.
I am cracking up because all I can think about in my head when you said when you said Wet and Wild lip pencils, all I could think of was 666. And all of us in the industry are, and I'm sure some listeners are dying laughing right now because Wet and Wild 666 lip pencil was the official, I think it was like the official lip pencil of the 90s. I remember seeing somewhere that Heather Locklear like bought it by the handful and was using it on Melrose Place, which was like the coolest show. And I just remember wearing 666 like every single day of the 90s. And we all had that pinky brown matte lip. And that just brought me back down memory lane. I think for class brands, value wise, where you're getting a bang for your buck. Now that we've talked about, some of the mass brands, you can do it. But in the class brands, I think value wise, you're starting to see the masstige, clean indie brands are where you're really getting a bang for your buck. RMS, Merit, Say Beauty. And you have a name for these, which I think is adorable.
Oh, the finger painting brands.
Finger brands. What do you mean by that?
I just mean like they come in pots or they come in pumps. And so many of these products, you can just stick your finger in. You can't screw them up. And, actually, I was just reading last night that Janine LaBelle has this new brand called Neen, Neen, Neen. And the tagline is actually makeup that you can't F up. And I was like, that's so well positioned because we had just talked about this finger painting thing. And then I saw that it's exactly that. Like, I love Tower 28. I love Merit. I love these guys. Tower 28, I really, really, really love some of their like SPF products. And I love that it's good for a sensitive skin, but it's finger painting. You can stick your finger in it. You can't mess it up.
It really is. It's also finger painting because all those brands, the pigment load is so light and so sheer. They work on any skin tone. Honestly, and I hate to say that because I don't find that to be true often, but they really do because they're sheer pigment load. They're quick. They're easy. Slip them in your purse. They tend to be, they have a very lightweight feel. It's easy makeup. It's quick. It's easy. It's in the bag. It's get and go, and you're out of there.
Yeah, it's carpool makeup.
Totally carpool makeup. And I think that's why they've done so well. And they're really going for the mom sort of, group, as I like to say, the mom makeup brands. Maybe Say is like skewing a bit younger, but I know Merit for sure, RMS, they're going for, the mid-aged type of woman who's busy, who doesn't spend a lot of time or money on her makeup and just wants to look fresh and good. I love it. I applaud them. I think they're all doing a great job. I think, honestly, masstige as a market right now is really killing it. I think overall doing a really good job of being out there for women as a way to just be a part of beauty, but not be so entrenched in it that it's overwhelming or taking over their life.
Agreed. It's very accessible. It's very user friendly. And it gives the woman that wants just a little oomph, like she needs a pick me up and she needs something that'll perform, that's quick, that's easy. You can just pat it on the inner corner, the outer corner of your eye. They're multi-use products, things you can use everywhere. And that's definitely something that we're seeing. And I think definitely something that everybody appreciates. For example, in the spring, even Youngblood Cosmetics, isn't that a blast from the past? The mineral makeup, they're coming out with these beautiful sticks. They're multi-sticks. Like we're seeing sticks everywhere. And that's ease of use. You're able to do a monochromatic look, or with 2 or 3, you can do your whole look. I'm loving that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then as far as class goes, I think we have our usual suspects that I think are doing a really good job right now. Obviously, Chanel. I'm a huge Sisley fan. I make no bones about that. And I love that they just got Robin Black. Check it out. She's one of the greatest makeup artists working today. And she is now sort of taking over Sisley and really turning it into even more incredible brand. I know you love YSL, Guerlain, I think Shiseido. There's so many really good ones. And then we're going to have a future episode talk about some beauty that's been really disappointing. Bummer beauty, future episode. There, I'm looking at you, Gucci Beauty.
Yep. Bummer beauty is coming.
It's coming.
I love my Guerlain. I love that they brought in Violette. She's really brought some fresh French, indie artistic brands. You know what else I love about this is I love that Violette is the creative director for Guerlain, but she also has her own line. And this is one of the first times that we've seen a big legacy brand allow their in-house to have her own brand at the same time. And I applaud them for being so cool that way.
We need to have her on and talk about how she did that, because that is unheard of.
It's unheard of. Violette, we're coming for you.
Yeah, to watch out, because
and her I don't know why we haven't talked about her products. Her Bisou bombs are great. She has some beautiful products.
Really does. And another super talented female in the industry. We love to support our fellow females in the beauty industry, and she's doing a great job. So come back next week, please, everybody, for our next episode. All that glitters. We're going to go shiny. We're going to gloss everything shiny, or as Hillary likes to say,
schlitter. Don't use shimmer. Don't use glitter. Don't use frost. Well, listen, at a certain point, you have to look in the mirror and say, is my kitten eyeshadow serving me, or is there something better? And I can't use glitter anymore, and I can't use shimmer anymore. But the in-between, schlitter is what I call it. I'm all about the schlitter.
So glimmer versus shimmer versus pearl versus glow versus schlitter. Everything that is shiny. How to keep your sparkle without dimming your light. So join us next week for all that glitters.
Meanwhile, find Life Gloss on Instagram and TikTok at lifeglasspodcast.com and on our website, lifegloss.com. You just might catch us live on TikTok. You never know. All right, everybody. Susan, stay glossy.
Hillary, stay glossy.